Hey everyone, it's Emily Graziano here, and today I'm here to do a review on the Paul Stanley solo album Live to Win, which came out October 24th, 2006. It's Paul's second solo album, and personally for me, I was 10 years old in 5th grade when this album came out. Wait, let me adjust that. Okay, there was like this glaring light in my eye. Okay. And I remember coming home from school, seeing this album, my mom showing it to me. I'm like, oh yeah, Paul had that album coming out today. And I remember opening it up and taking a look specifically at the booklet here, looking through all the pictures. And I remember seeing this picture. And I'm like, oh, that's Paul being Paul. He's always like with the hand. That's like a signature thing. Ever since I can remember, I associate Paul with like putting his hand out to the crowd like that for some reason. I don't know if it originates with Smashes and Thrashes or like the hand signal for a Psycho Circus or whatever. I don't know why, but I like, oh, well, that's Paul. That's like Paul's signature right there. And then I remember seeing this picture, and I'm like, is Paul too old to wear a shirt like that? Is Paul too old to wear a shirt like that? And I remember asking my mom, how old is Paul again? Because I really didn't know exactly how old he was. I knew he was older than my dad, and she's like, well, he's 9 years older than your father. I'm like, oh yeah, he's definitely too old to wear a shirt like that. And now looking back, I'm like, well, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong. At least at this point, he was not shaving his chest hair and a six-pack. Paul, I love you, but that's not acceptable, okay? That's pathetic. Okay. And then I remember reading the liner notes right here, the thank you notes. And Paul, thanking everybody in Kiss, and then thanking his family. I'm like, oh yeah, Paul has a son, Evan, and he got remarried last year to Aaron. And then what shocked me the most was, and little Colin. And like, Paul has a second son? I'm like, he's got to be like a little baby. And I'm like, that is so bizarre. Like, the fact that this man, Paul, at this point, who's 9 years older than my dad, had a like an infant son less than a year old, blew my mind. That was a very bizarre concept for me. I'm like, he's going to be really old when his kid is like 10. Which, now looking back, what Paul was in his 50s when, like, his kids with Aaron were born, and that's actually kind of, well, I don't want to say normal, but it's not like you're in your 60s having a kid, but still, to me as a 10-year-old, that was a very bizarre concept. I'm like, how can Paul have a kid, like a baby at his age? And my mom's like, Emily, remember, his wife is 20 years younger than he is, so she'll be around to take care of the kids even when he's gone. I'm like, oh yeah, well, that's kind of irrelevant, but that was just my personal take on this. But now on another note, to me, this album, Live to Win, is similar to the type of music production, the style that was being produced when I was in elementary school and like middle school-ish. So to me, the music isn't as dated as it isn't as dated to me as maybe it is to some people. I've got a friend who calls this like Linkin Paul. And the person really doesn't dig the album. And then I think that's really funny because there are songs on here that I could see some groups doing, or it's very similar in the style of. And then shout out to my pal Les Wadley, who opening night went to the Live to Win tour. I think that's awesome. And Paul, he told me that Paul had a really good voice, and Les, I would love, one of these days, Les and I are going to do a video together. Like, I swear to God, people, it's going to happen. And I'd love to talk about that experience with you of Paul's Live to Win tour. Because not only was he doing songs from Live to Win, he was doing 78 solo songs. He was doing deep cuts from Kiss. And it's like, wow, Paul doing that. Like, he did Magic Touch. That's amazing. So, another note before I get into the songs. Paul ignores the fact this album came out. There's no mention of it in his book. He won't mention it today. He acts as if it doesn't exist for some weird reason. And I don't know why. I mean, even if you're in embarrassed by the album, or you think that it should have been done differently, or you wish you never did it in the first place, you still have to acknowledge that it happened. I don't understand why he likes to erase it off the face of the earth. I'm not sure why. And something else to note, Paul wrote or co-wrote every single song on this album, so I think that is very cool. And with that, I'll get started on the tracks. Okay, first track is the title track, Live to Win, co-written by Paul, his long-term collaborator Desmond Child, and Andreas Carlson. These lyrics have aged very well. The message of the song is very empowering, and back in an era when it was still somewhat taboo to mention like depression and anxiety, frustration, downgraded, down before you're done, rejection, depression, like that was still only being done by a select group of artists who were associated with like the emo scene. So now it's the fact that Paul Stanley tackled that, I think that was a very brave thing to do, because usually these subjects at this time was still associated for like emo teen punk groups. And now I think that it's a widely accepted thing that people can feel down, depressed, anxious, have anxiety, no matter who you are. It's not just that select group of people. It's if you are human, you are prone to it, no matter what. And I think as a society, we're finally starting to realize that. At least my generation is. Like, it's not a taboo subject for people of my generation. But I think it's very interesting that Paul tackled that, because that's a very youthful sounding Paul on this song, and that's kind of a cohesive thing throughout the whole album, is that Paul, he sounds very youthful. He doesn't sound like he's an old man. He actually has a really good voice on this album, and that's very admirable. And I want to say this as well. Paul has a very powerful voice. It's separate from what he does with Kiss when he's the star child, or even during the non-makeup years. But you know it's still Paul, and that's just the gift of Paul singing, I think. Okay, next song, Lift. Paul's voice is great on this album. To me personally, the song's a little bit boring. It's not hooky enough, I guess. It has a good arrangement, but it's my least favorite song on the album. I don't know, I just think it's kind of boring. Next song, Wake Up Screaming. The first thing that came to my mind with this song was actually the name of a 1941 movie starring, oh god, who's in it? Carol Landis, Betty Grapple, and is it Victor Mature? Who's yeah, I think it's Victor Mature. It's a 1941 film noir called I Wake Up Screaming. That was the first thing that came to my mind when I heard this song. But honestly, I think I could see the band Muse doing this song, or I could see the band, maybe The Killers, doing this song. It's a very, very, like, the lyrics are very, like, that mid-2000s feel, and I think Paul really was trying to capture that vibe in this song. But I actually like it. I don't think that it's the best song on here, but I like it. So it's not my favorite, but it's listenable, and yeah, I could definitely see the inspiration that he got for the song. Okay, next song, Every Time I See You Around. Bruce Kulick, everybody, is on bass for this song. Personally, I enjoy this song. It's basically the same concept as Every Time I Look at You. I mean, come on, these phrases are synonymous. Every time I look at you, every time I see you around. Basically means the same thing. But I think Paul's vocal styling on here is closer to that of Forever without, like, doing the super high parts. I think his voice sounds very similar. I could actually see the band Lifehouse doing this song. I don't know why, but I just feel like they could have pulled it off. But I dig this song. I really enjoy it. Next song, Bulletproof. This features John Vobb on the guitar solo. I feel like Paul could have done this song earlier in his career. I'm not sure if it could have been a Kiss song per se, but maybe it could have been done earlier in his career. I feel it could be, and it definitely has 70s style backing vocals with how that's arranged, and it's like, wow, that's a throwback. But yeah, I feel like of all the songs on here, this one is the most like, I don't want to say vintage because that's not the correct term, but I feel as if it's got that 70s rock influence in it the most. So this song, I feel, could be the most liked on here, even if you don't dig the album. This is the most 70s style rock song. Okay, next one, All About You. This is the most 2006 sounding song on the album, and even the title, All About You, is very, very dated. That's what a lot of people were doing back then, naming songs like that. It's dated. If I close my eyes and I play that song, it could bring me back to like being in 5th grade. It could bring me back. Oh wait, Les Wadley just texted me. I'll get to your text, Les. I will after I do the video. I feel as if I'm in a time capsule, and Paul, he's really trying to be like in the moment, like, hey, I'm hip, and I think this song is just trying a little bit too hard to be current. And by doing that today, it sounds really dated. But to someone like me who grew up in that era, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It does bring me back to that time. But I don't think that's necessarily a super good thing either. But it does really remind you, hey, it's 2006. Okay, moving on. Second to None. This is written for Paul's wife, Erin. And by the way, Bruce Kulick is on bass. This is definitely, I equate this to be the Hold Me, Touch Me, Think of Me When We're Apart song of the album, even though I don't think that Hold Me, Touch Me was written for someone specific. I could be wrong, but I don't know if it was written for someone specific. But this song is very personal for Paul, because if you read into it, it's basically about his and Erin's relationship. And at this point, they would have been married maybe about a year. So I thought that was really sweet. Maybe I'm too sappy. Maybe I'm too much of a romantic idealist, but I think it's really, really cute that he wrote a song specifically to Erin. And he mentions her specifically in the liner notes. Erin, you are second to none. So, yeah. And just so you know, it's confirmed right here that I will be there, and written in the lyrics right here. The liner notes, liner notes, that I Will Be There from Carnival of Souls was written for Evan. So, there you go. Second to none. I actually think it's quite sweet. Okay, next song. That's Not Me. I think the song is kind of boring. It's not terrible, but nothing stands out on it. But Paul's voice is really good. It's really strong. It just doesn't have a hook that hooks me. I'm sorry, guys. That's the other song that I think is actually quite boring on the song. On the album, sorry. Next up, Loving You Without You Now. Bruce Kulick on bass. A really, really odd title, but I really love the arrangement. This is the most sappy, lovesick song Paul has ever written, ever sang in his whole career, and it's a solo Paul write. Like, it's the only solo written song on this album, and this is the real and raw Paul. Like, if Paul wants to, we all know Paul is the lover, he's the star child, he's the romantic of the group, but really, in real life, that comes from him. That's not just his star child persona, that's who he is. And I think this is Exhibit A for anyone trying to challenge that stance, because you listen to this and it's soppy, it's wearing your heart on your sleeve. I really dig it. Maybe I'm just a soppy person and a romantic at heart, but I really dig it. I think Paul really went deep inside his heart to write something like this, and I really like that. I applaud Paul on that, because I think that is so raw and real, and that's great. I adore that. I know this song is gonna get like, oh, Emily, you're so sappy. This song is like, it's giving me a cavity, but I really dig it. I'm not gonna say sorry either because it's just my opinion. It's just my opinion. Okay. Final song on here, Where Angels Dare. This is written by Paul, Desmond Child, and John Five, who is also playing on the song, John Five. I really like this song. I love it. Well, it's not exactly catchy. There's just something about it that gets my attention. Maybe it's the playing, maybe it's just the lyrics, like the way that they are sung. Again, it's not catchy, but there's something about it that just captures my attention and makes me like it. So I don't really have anything else to say about it, but it's catchy. It's not repetitive where they say Where Angels Dare like a lot. They only mention the line once, Where Angels Dare to Fly, but it's just a really good song. I really like it. Ooh, the booklet fell down. Okay, some other notes here that I wrote down. Live to Win, whether you like it or hate it, I think should be acknowledged that this is Paul's last vocal hurrah. This is 2006. The last Kiss vocal hurrah on an album was Carnival of Souls. Again, like it or hate it, I think you have to acknowledge Paul's voice was very strong on that album, and it's the same thing here. Like it or hate it, Paul's voice is really, really great. The last live show for Kiss definitely rocked the nation. Again, you could count his One Live Kiss tour, and in any medium, I think this is the last project associated with Paul where his voice is so freaking amazing. And then it ties into that One Live Kiss DVD that came out that was filmed in Chicago at the House of Blues. I wouldn't have been allowed to go, because I don't think they allow anyone under a certain age at the House of Blues, and I would have been 10 or 11 by the time that tour came around. So that's a bummer, but I don't even own the DVD yet. If I can find the DVD, I do want to get it for my mom because I know she would love it. Remember, Paul is my mom's guy, everybody. Paul is her guy. And overall, I know this can be people saying, oh, Paul's trying to be the young guy, but he's trying to be with the cool kids. And while that is evident on a couple songs, I think Paul took a very youthful approach to this album. It takes a lot for somebody who is not... Well, I don't want to say Kiss wasn't current when this album came out, because they were actually having a kind of like a mini resurgence with Gene and Family Jewels. Even though in 2006 they weren't touring, they had that mini Rising Sun / Hit and Run tour, I think, that only ran for a couple shows, and then that incident where Paul was hospitalized, and there's still nothing clear about that because Paul doesn't mention that incident in his book either. It's kind of a hairy situation with that, but I want to mention an analogy here that was applied to Alfred Hitchcock when he made his movie Frenzy in the 70s, and what the film critics said was that Frenzy is a young man's film. Hitchcock at the time was past his prime. He had a couple failures with Topaz and Torn Curtain. Torn Curtain is actually, it's bad. I haven't seen Topaz yet, but I have a feeling it's pretty bad. But Hitchcock, he felt revitalized when he was doing Frenzy, and he was showing people, I can move with the times. I'm not afraid at my age to experiment and try things that other people are trying, and I'm going to do it my way, but still show people what they want to see. And I think that analogy applies directly here to Paul, because Paul, he was doing the same thing. This is not this is not an old man's album. This is the album of somebody with a very youthful mindset. This is somebody being fresh and revitalized in this point in their career after 30 some odd years in the business. And I think, like it or hate it, you have to give Paul props for doing something different, doing something a little bit new. And while his voice was still pretty freaking good. I mean, it's not, I wouldn't say this is Paul in his prime, but it's not Paul worn out like he is now. Okay, I'll say that. Paul really tried something different, and he actually sounds good. Now, whether you like that is a completely different story, but I think he gets props for trying something new when he can still do it, and for that, I have to give him a round of applause, because I feel that that was a really cool thing for him to do. The album for me, like I said, hasn't dated as much because it will bring me back to like my childhood in that time. But maybe I think for some of you it may sound too dated. Like, what is this? But what are your thoughts on this? Do you have this album? Do you like this album? What are your thoughts now? I'm really glad that I did this review, and shout out to the person who I was talking with who prompted me to make this review. I'm doing this partially for you, so hey. I think this is a pretty solid album, and that's just my opinion, and I want to thank you for watching this video. Thank you, because I know this album has a lot of mixed feelings on it. So I'm Emily Graziano. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.